name is Daniel Ziblatt. I'm a professor of government at Harvard University. I've co-written a book with my co-author Steve Levitsky called How Democracies Die. Really 3 points from the book I think are really worth emphasizing. Number one, the way democracies has died over time has changed. During the Cold War, most democracies died through military coups. Since the end of the Cold War, the way that democracies die is through elections at the hands of elected leaders. Politicians get elected, come to office, and then once in office, dismantle democratic institutions. Number two, the question then becomes, how do we prevent demagogues, people who have authoritarian inclinations, from using democratic institutions to come to power and then dismantle them? How do we prevent them from coming to power in the first place? Historically, the way this has happened is through political parties and politicians, establishment politicians, having the political courage to draw a line in the sand and say, we will not cooperate with these demagogues. When politicians have failed to do this, whether in 1930s Germany, whether in 1990s Venezuela, whether 1920s Italy, in all of those instances, mainstream politicians see a demagogue on the horizon, and rather than drawing a line in the sand and saying, we will not cooperate with these figures, in each of those instances, mainstream politicians think they can tap into the popularity of these outside demagogues. And so in Italy, mainstream politicians embraced Mussolini. In Germany, mainstream politicians embraced Adolf Hitler. And in 1990s Venezuela, mainstream politicians embraced Hugo Chavez. In each instance, a kind of Faustian bargain was formed where political leaders thought they could tap into the popularity of these guys, but in every instance, these bargains backfired, and the outside demagogues came to power, posing an existential threat to democracies. The third big point is this. Once a demagogue is in office, what happens? The game has really changed, and democracy is fundamentally challenged when you have authoritarians in power. In the United States, we tend to think that our checks and balances will constrain authoritarian demagogues. That's the way the system was designed, to constrain the power of overreaching politicians. In many ways, our checks and balances is an ingenious system that works quite well. But one thing we haven't really fully appreciated is that our checks and balances rely on a set of unwritten rules. Our Constitution is really a short document. And at the end of the day, our Constitution doesn't enforce itself. It requires political leaders committed to norms of mutual toleration, norms of self-restraint, to protect the democracy. I mean, the Constitution only works when they behave in ways that have allowed our democracy to work over the last several hundred years. So as polarization has come to American politics, as it has in other countries around the world, these norms have become frayed. Politicians increasingly view each other as existential threats. Rather than viewing each other simply as rivals, they view each other as enemies. And the degree to which we do that, and we see this around the world and as well as in the United States, democracy is much more fragile. So the task ahead that we conclude is to think about ways of repairing our political system, to treat each other no longer as enemies, as simply rivals with competing visions for politics. People need to fight hard for what they believe in, but citizens as well as political leaders need to treat each other with respect. We think the United States faces a set of challenges, but in many ways the United States is a very old democracy, a very rich democracy, and we really think that the U.S. can repair itself, but we face challenges that we've never faced before.